YMCA education series is free and open to the public. We encourage you to spread the word and invite family and friends to participate. We host approximately 8 to 10 of these programs a month, varying in different topics. This program will last about an hour, and you might find that you have questions during the presentation, which we will happy to address at the end of the program. When you have a question for the speakers, simply type it into the chat section and on your screen, and I will relay the question to the speaker at the end of the program. You can also raise your hand and ask a question yourself if the chat button isn't working for you. I ask that you please keep your questions general, and we will do our best to address them all in the time allotted today. Thank you again for joining us this evening. And now I would like to introduce Matt Margolis, talking about navigating the long-term care maze, the hidden costs and potential pitfalls of long-term care. Sorry.
All right.
There you go. Sorry. Welcome, Matt.
All right, cool. Wasn't sure the floor was mine. Thanks, Pam. And good morning, everybody. So as Pam said, my name is Matt Margolis. I've been doing these talks now with the Y for, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, since its inception. And I was doing them not, a couple times a year or more than a couple times a year for the first couple of years. And I think maybe since, I want to say for the last almost 2 years, I've probably been doing them pretty close to every month. If you've attended some of my talks in the past, there's definitely some crossover information, right? I mean, I only, I like to think that I know a lot, but when it comes to the things that we do, to some extent, we do practice sort of within a box, and so there is only so much I can talk about. So you'll notice some of these topics, for sure, the topics repeat themselves over the course of the year, right? I do about 4 or 5 different topics, and then we kind of put them on replay. And then even within those topics, there'll be times when I cover, probably cover things today that where I'm going to touch on some of those things last month, or I'll touch on some of them next month. And some might look at that and not love it. I think actually it's probably a good idea for us to hear some of these things over and over, especially when we are procrastinating and we are not getting some of the things in place that we know we should. So, hopefully it kind of hammers the point home for folks. And, I think that a lot of us sort of learn and remember through repetition. So hopefully there is some benefit to me repeating myself, probably more so than the way I repeat myself with my little kids. So my law partner, Lauren Weldon, and I have had our practice now for about 6.5 years. Our practice is in downtown Park Ridge, even though I'm a Northbrook resident. We really concentrate our practice in very specific areas. We do estate planning and elder law. That's all we do. We don't stray away from that in any sense. Anything that comes to us that is not within our wheelhouse, so to speak, we refer it out. We don't try to just take on any cases that come our way. We've got a great network of other attorneys that we work with. So the one thing I will just say to whoever's attending today is that listen, I'm happy to be a resource in any sense. If you ever need a lawyer for anything in the world, you can shoot me an email, give me a call. I'm happy, again, if we don't do it, I'm happy to connect you with somebody, that I know, like, and trust. And I tell everybody that the people I refer my clients to are the same attorneys that I would hire if I had the same issue, and if I had an issue that that they could assist with. So, and I really do mean that. I've kind of always held my practice out from the standpoint of treating clients like I would want my parents to be treated, right? How would I want my parents to be treated if they were sitting across the table from an estate planning attorney, putting an estate plan in place for the first time? Or how would I want my parents treated if they were my mom or dad was going through a healthcare transition, and it was a really difficult time, and they were looking for advice and how to maybe apply for Medicaid or protect assets. Again, I want to treat those clients like I want my parents to be treated. A lot of care and compassion in this area of the law, at least with us. I can't speak for other attorneys, but I know that most of my colleagues are very similar. We have to. We deal with things that are difficult, and people are, most people are dealing with these issues for the first time ever, and it's not easy, especially when you're dealing with a loved one that's failing in health. Sorry to be rambling. Our practice, again, is only estate planning, elder law. That means we do wills, trust, powers of attorney, asset protection work. We do powers of attorney for 18-year-olds going up to college. We do estate planning for folks in their 90s and 100s, and they may not really need elder law. They may just really need to update their will or to put a trust in place or to get powers of attorney in place because they've never had them. And then on the other side of our practice, we, handle a lot of things elder law related. Not every single thing, but one of the big things we don't do is guardianship work. And so that's when somebody is incapacitated and they do not have powers of attorney in place. They might need to go through a guardianship in court. That's something we don't handle. But again, we've got great colleagues we can refer that business to. We're not going to be talking about that today. I think that might be next month. But that the idea of a guardianship really speaks to the point of how important it is to have powers of attorney in place. So if that's something that anybody here doesn't have, I highly recommend that you get those in place, or attend another talk I'm giving where we'll talk about them. But really on the elder law side of our practice, we do a lot related to helping people apply for Medicaid in nursing homes or supportive living facilities, and we help them protect assets, or we can help them protect assets at the same time if we have the ability to, based on their circumstances, as well as a particular benefit through the VA that we can help people apply for. So today, navigating the long-term care maze. So really the goal today for me is really just to highlight some of the different long-term care options. I think a lot of people kind of mix up, assisted living and a nursing home and independent living, and we really don't necessarily know what these places, the care they necessarily provide, what the costs might look like, what types of benefits we might be able to apply for. And so, really, I just want to kind of highlight this. I anticipate, I don't think we'll go till 10:15 today. We might need about a half hour, 40 minutes. And I am expecting, I want to let everybody know this, I'm expecting to potentially receive a text from just a personal matter right around 10 o'clock. So if I have to just duck out literally for 90 seconds right around 10 o'clock, I apologize in advance. This came up at the last minute. So, but I promise it will not be for more than a minute or 90 seconds. So, I'll just kind of go like this and stop sharing my screen for a second and mute myself. All right, enough background. So when we look at different levels of care, we can kind of list them and if you want to take notes, you can. I am not a slide type person. I really just like to be conversational. But if we look at different levels of care, or living situations outside of our home, right? We're looking at independent living, assisted living, or supportive living. Okay, and those are going to be kind of on the same level, assisted living and supportive living. Then we have, memory care, which can kind of float, and we can have assisted living memory care, we can have skilled nursing memory care, and then we have skilled nursing. And skilled nursing is really your top level, your top level of care when it comes to a facility. And then another type of facility out there is what we call, people call it a CCRC, a continuum care retirement community, right? And this is a place sort of like, to talk about a place sort of in our neck of the woods, for those of you that are in the Northbrook Glenview area, there's the V in the Glen, or Covenant Village here in Northbrook. And these are places where they have all levels of care, right? You can move in and you can be there independent, right? You can be there independent living, where they're really not providing any care. You're just in a living, you're just there to live in a more community, in a community setting. But then they provide, assisted living, they might have memory care, and they have skilled nursing, right? And so the idea behind some of these places that, it's like a one-stop shop, right? We're gonna, if we have to move there or we have to move a loved one in there, we know that, as long as we can afford it, and again, these are some of the things we'll talk about as far as how some of these places charge or bill, if we can afford it, people like these places because, we know that if mom and dad have to move, if they move there in their late 70s or early 80s independently, we know that no matter what, they can stay there until the end of their life, right? Because they're, no matter how they decline, if they decline, right? I hope they don't, but if they decline over time, we know that all levels of care are managed in this place, right? And so they don't need to move, a mile down the street to the next place because, the place that they're at only handles certain level of care. And then, I don't typically get into a ton of detail here on this call regarding this, but obviously we have the idea of caregivers at home as well, right? And virtually in every case, or most cases, caregivers at home are going to be paid privately. We're either going to go through, we have the option of going through an agency, which is what we recommend to people. And, for those that can afford it, right? Because at the end of the day, all these levels of care, all these types of care settings really come down to what can we afford. It's unfortunate, but that's just how it is, right? And so, if we need care at home, I'll talk. I do think it's important, so I'll talk about this for a couple of minutes. We have a couple different paths, right? One is we go through an agency, right? And we hire an agency, and right now, agency rates are somewhere around $29 to about $30 or $32 an hour per hour. I can tell you when I started, and I don't like the fact that I'm already at a point where I can say when I started this business about 10 years ago, it's been almost 11 years actually. But when I started, it was about, the hourly rate was in the low 20s. So you can see it's gone up significantly in just 10 years. And so we're looking at an hourly rate when hiring an agency, probably somewhere between 29 and 30, 31, $32 an hour. Most of them probably being close to 30. You can probably find some out there for less than 30, maybe around 25. I think in a lot of cases, we've all heard this phrase, right? You get what you pay for. The caregivers may not be trained as well with some of those facilities or with some of those companies. Maybe they're not busy for a reason, and so they're looking to charge less to get business in the door. Again, these are just things that we want to consider when we're looking at a caregiving agency. So we have the agency model, right, where we hire them, we sign a contract, they're going to provide caregivers, and when we go through an agency, there's a couple things that we like, right? They're licensed, they're bonded, they're insured. So if for some reason there are any issues that arise, we know, this is not what we do in our practice. I'm not saying that I love the idea of suing somebody, but God forbid, the caregiver injures, a loved one, at least the family has some recourse, right? They have deep pockets they can go after with the agency behind that caregiver. Similarly, what if a caregiver is sick one day, or a caregiver that their main caregiver is out of town and is visiting family? Well, when you have an agency, obviously they can provide replacements, and we may not love the replacement, it may not be the most ideal person in the world, but at least they're able to provide a replacement of some sort, and that can be very helpful for families, right? Because what's the option if we don't have a replacement? Is a family member taking time off work? A lot of times that can be pretty stressful on a family and on an older individual. Then we have the private caregiver, right? And the private caregiver is the person where, hey, so-and-so took care of my uncle, and now he's taking care of my mom and dad. And maybe maybe this person, is a nurse, has a nursing background. Or maybe this person's just been a lifelong caregiver. But this private caregiver, typically we're able to pay them less, right? And as far as the range, I mean, I've seen situations where they're paid, today, maybe as little as $17, $18 an hour, probably up to about $25 an hour or so. So, when you're talking about somebody that might need significant care at home, the difference of $5 to $10 an hour less makes a huge difference, right? I mean, think about that on the scale of having a caregiver for 50 hours a week, right? That's about $200 hours or so a month. And if we're talking about a $10 difference, that's $2,000 less a month. That's close to $25,000 less a year. I mean, it's a lot of money, right? So I get it. I get why people go the private caregiver route, but there's things that people need to consider. Okay, number one, we need to have a contract in place. And I don't care if we're paying the person with a check. I don't really like the idea of paying them with cash. Okay, even if they ask for it, I don't like the idea of giving them cash. But we're going to pay them with a check. And even though we will recommend to clients that they, have it work with an accountant or a CPA and basically treat this person like an actual employee and give them a 1099 and basically run payroll for them, taking out workman's comp and Medicare and Social Security. 99% of my clients will never do that. And that's fine. I'll recommend it. I know they won't do it. But I really want to make sure they have a contract in place. And the reason I want to make sure they have a contract for twofold, right? One, we want something in writing because again, we're going to have language in this contract that says, listen, if this person injures me or this person causes damage or harm, we have some recourse because we both signed this contract that says, I agree that if I cause this harm, I am liable. Okay. So number one, we've got this contract for that reason. But then number two, we help people with we do a lot of Medicaid applications every year for clients. And one of the big things with Medicaid is when we go to apply for Medicaid, Medicaid wants to look back 5 years to see what we did with our money, right? They're basically looking, did we give any money away? Right? They don't care if we bought a big screen TV for $3,000. They don't care if we took a $10,000 trip to Italy. Medicaid cares, did we give money away? Did we give it to somebody else? Because in their eyes, if we gave money away, we did it for the reason of getting our assets down to a point where we're eligible to apply for Medicaid, right? That's their take. And so if we're paying a caregiver, and I know this might sound crazy, but if I'm paying a caregiver and I'm writing this caregiver checks and there's no contract, and I go to apply for Medicaid, Medicaid's going to see that I wrote all these checks, right? And maybe it's $300,000 of checks that I wrote to the various caregivers over the last 5 years. Medicaid's stance will be, without a contract, their stance will be that I gifted that money away, right? That these 2-3 caregivers were friends or family, or who cares who they were. Medicaid doesn't really care who they are, but their stance is going to be that I gifted money to these people. And honestly, just the idea of having a contract in place will do away with that presumption on Medicaid's behalf. Okay, so very important to have a contract in place with a private caregiver at home. I cannot stress this enough. I can tell you that I have clients all the time where they come to us. We're hired to file a Medicaid application, and obviously in our discovery phase, we find out they had a caregiver, and of course it was private and there was no contract, and then it's an uphill battle. Then we're talking about having signing affidavits saying that yes, this was a caregiver. We need the caregiver to sign an affidavit as well. In a lot of cases, the caregivers don't want to sign an affidavit, right? Chances are they were paid. They probably didn't claim the money from a tax standpoint. And even though I can tell my clients to tell the caregivers that Medicaid's not going to go to the IRS, it's not going to get back to them, it's not going to hurt them, it's only going to help your loved one, my client. Inevitably, 50% of these caregivers are not going to be willing to sign this affidavit. So let's nip it in the bud. Let's take care of it ahead of time. Okay. And if we already have a private caregiver in place, let's sign a contract for everything going forward. And then if we ever have to apply for Medicaid, even though we can't sign a contract retroactively, just so everybody knows, we cannot sign a contract retroactively saying this covers all care from 2 years ago. We like to think that we can make a pretty good argument to Medicaid saying, hey, listen, you see the checks were written to John Doe for the last 2 years, for 2 years prior to the contract being signed. And then you see the contract with John Doe and then checks being written to John Doe after. I think you can put 2 and 2 together and we can figure out that this was a caregiver. So, all right, that's what I'll say about care at home. Oh, last thing, there's one program that we can tap into if we have a loved one who needs care at home and they have more limited means. So if somebody has under $17,500 in assets, $17,500 in assets, not income. I'm not talking about what their Social Security is or their pension. I'm talking about what they have total in all their checking accounts, savings accounts, IRAs, 401ks, cash value of life insurance, add it all up. If it's less than $17,500, and even if they own a home, which is fine, they can apply for something called the CCP, Community Care Program. This is run through the Department of Aging, sort of a faction of Medicaid. And through that program, they can basically apply to get some caregiving services at home. This isn't going to be somebody that needs basically round the clock care. I think most people that can approve for this, on the high end, I think people might be able to get 30 to 40 hours a week provided, which is a lot. Don't get me wrong. But that's also not that common, right? I'd say most people those clients that we worked with that have applied for that probably get somewhere in the range of 15 to 30 hours a month, a week. So, but a good program, and a nice benefit out there. All right. Now that we need care out of the home, there's places that we can look at, or living situations, not necessarily care, but living situations out of the home, right? And so I talked about independent living. Independent living is, I kind of look at it, it's like a dorm or community living, kind of like a dorm room in college. It's like that for seniors, right? Except where people are going to, maybe people will make our beds every once in a while, typically not. There might be some meals that are provided, okay? but there's no care, right? So for independent living, we're basically looking, this might be for people where, you know what, they don't want their 3,000 square foot, 4-bedroom home anymore. They don't even want a condo anymore, right? They want to be in a situation where they have no maintenance, right? They don't have to take care of their lawn. They don't have to hire somebody to fix the water heater when it breaks. They don't need to deal with snow removal. And not just that, but now they're in a community setting where they're living around other people that are in their age group. Maybe it's people that are, either they're social people and most of their friends have moved away, they've gone to Florida, they're passing away, and they really want to be around other people. And in a situation where they don't necessarily need to travel to see them, right? So they kind of move into this independent living situation where they've got, they kind of make friends and have built-in, there's games, there's activities. They might, have situations where they'll drive people to go shopping, to go to the mall. Maybe they'll go to baseball games or things like that, or whenever those things kind of start up again. So we have the independent living model again, which is, there's no care. It's just me moving out of my house and being in a situation where I don't have to worry about all those things that we deal with as a homeowner. Now, if we start to need some care, there are situations where people can live in independent living and bring a caregiver in. Okay, that happens. That's all I'll say. I'm not going to go into tons of detail there, but there are situations where, we can live in independent living and potentially bring a caregiver in. Not every single independent living facility will allow that, but some will. Then sort of our next level of care is sort of assisted living and supportive living. And I'm going to kind of put these on the same level. I'd say most of us are probably more familiar with the idea of assisted living. Okay, this is a type of living community that I think is just more common. We've heard people talk about it more often over the years. So assisted living, and let me get back really quick about independent living. Independent living is 100% private pay. Okay, 100% out of pocket. There's no benefits that you can apply for independent living. You are going to be out of pocket. And as far as long-term care insurance is concerned, because there's no care aspect to it, as far as I know, and I could be wrong, but 95% sure, long-term care insurance is not going to cover independent living because I don't require any care, and that's what long-term care insurance is for. So then our next level of care is sort of assisted living and supportive living. Assisted living will be, where we need help with maybe a few activities of daily living. Maybe we need somebody to help transport us to meals in the morning or in the afternoon or at dinner. Maybe we need somebody to help us get dressed. We need somebody to help prepare our meals, right? Maybe we cannot prepare our food anymore. And so in an assisted living setting, first of all, any place that's called assisted living, it is 100% private pay. Okay, there will be no government benefits we can apply for if we are in assisted living. There are some places that are also memory care assisted living. And this will be where, not just do I maybe need some help with activities of daily living, but I've got some memory issues, right? I've got some issues with capacity. Maybe I've been diagnosed with Alzheimer's or some other form of dementia. And so a memory care facility is also going to have, some additional services and programs, obviously tailored for individuals that have some sort of memory loss. And a lot of times they'll have, a lot of places will have sort of like a year-round curriculum, if you will, where they're doing, they've got very scheduled activities or they have very certain methods that they take with their residents, obviously in order to do their best to try to, stunt the progression of the memory loss over time. We know that we can't make it better, but the goal in a lot of these situations is how do we do our best from preventing it from really worsening quicker. So we've got assisted living, we've got memory care assisted living, then we have supportive living. So supportive living, again, sort of on the same level as assisted living, it's where I'm not totally independent, but I'm not to a point where I can't take care of myself at all, or for the most part. I need help with a few things. on a daily basis. And so supportive living, again, will be very similar to assisted living. The biggest difference between supportive living and assisted living is that in a supportive living facility, we can apply for Medicaid. Okay, every supportive living facility in Illinois takes Medicaid. So any place, okay, and I want to say this again, any place that is under the umbrella of supportive living takes Medicaid. It may not mean that I can just go in there and apply for Medicaid right away, right? It might, because most places that take Medicaid, when it comes to supportive living facilities and skilled nursing facilities, which we'll talk about, they have a certain amount of beds that are dedicated or reserved for Medicaid. Now, most supportive living facilities, most of the beds are dedicated for Medicaid. But there might be some of these facilities that say, listen, we can take you. And this is really more more skilled nursing, actually. So as I'm talking about supportive living, the issue that we see with supportive living is that there are just too few of them. And it's too bad, because there's a lot of people that really kind of fall in that category of where they don't need quite the level of care that a nursing facility, a nursing home would offer. They just need some care. However, the problem is, there just aren't enough supportive, and they don't have a ton of funds, right? And so they need this idea of being able to go somewhere and apply for Medicaid, but there's not enough supportive living facilities out there. Okay, so I can say that there really aren't. I think I'm correct in saying this. I don't think there's any that are truly on the we would consider the North Shore. There's plenty of nursing homes and plenty of nursing homes that take Medicaid on the North Shore, but there's no supportive living facilities on the North Shore. So the supportive living facilities around here, the closest ones are going to be either in the city or like Lake and McHenry County. And again, even with that said, there's not a ton of them out there. And so what will happen is people, if they're looking at supportive living or they think they might need supportive living at some point, I advise them, and of course it's always too late, because by the time people see us, they already have a need. But really, people need to be looking at the idea of maybe getting onto a waiting list somewhere, and trying to get their name out there, because some of these waiting lists for some of these more desirable supportive living facilities, I mean, the waiting list could be 2-3 years, honestly. And I know that might sound crazy, but it's just how it is. So it's one of those things where anytime we're looking at any kind of long-term care situation, the sooner we can start looking into things, the more proactive we can be. I mean, I know we all know these things, right? When we're proactive, we have more options. It's when we're acting in crisis that our options really decrease, and it makes things a lot more difficult. And we're under so much stress, right? And so we don't tend to make the best decisions, because we just feel like we don't have any time. So, supportive living, again, if we have a loved one that's we think that might need some help, and they might need to be moving out of the house soon, and we know that they have more limited means, and they might be able to private pay for a little bit, but that they're going to run out and might need to apply for Medicaid, we might want to start looking at some of these supportive living facilities sooner than later. And I'll talk about Medicaid after we talk about the nursing homes. I'll talk about how Medicaid works, just very, very high level. I'm not going to go into a ton of detail today on that. Then we have skilled nursing facility, right? The nursing home. Right? Most of us have heard of nursing homes before. I always say that, my dad, who will be 89, which is hard to believe, in 15 days, I feel like he still calls nursing homes convalescent homes. So that's, that phrase is before my time. But skilled nursing facility, this is sort of your highest level of care, right? And there are memory care skilled nursing facilities, right? Again, for those individuals that don't just battle memory issues, but have physical, greater physical needs as well. And so there's some skilled nursing facilities that sort of have that strong focus on memory care as well. But so your skilled nursing facilities are going to kind of fall into two categories, right? There's going to be some that are 100% private pay. Okay, they don't take Medicaid, they don't accept any government benefits, which is really just Medicaid. And so if you're going to move there, great. It's $300 or $350 a day, right? So the average cost for nursing homes in sort of the greater North Shore area, I would say probably going to be somewhere between about $8,500 and $12,000 a month is what you're looking at for the average nursing home cost. And again, that's a number that's increased in the last 10 years. I can say that 10 years ago, it was probably anywhere from 6,500 to 9,500 or $10,000. Now, I don't think you're going to find a nursing home for less than $8,000 a month. If you do, it's pretty rare. So we've got skilled nursing homes, some private pay only, right? You can move there, you pay the daily rate, or, obviously you pay monthly, but, according to a daily rate, and that's it, right? And hopefully, if you think that you have a loved one that's going to be there, could be there for a long time, hopefully you've got enough money to stay there, right? Because the last thing you want to do for a loved one is move them into a facility, a private pay facility, when it's a skilled nursing home, when you don't think that their money is going to last, right? I don't want to move my mom to a place. Listen, I might like the looks of this place better than the looks of this place. But if I know my mom is going to run out of money in 8 months, and I'm fairly certain she's going to live more than 8 months, I don't want to move her into this place for a short period of time and then have to pull her out and move her into another place. Right? I mean, I am not, obviously the last thing I'm suggesting is that we put our loved ones in a place that we don't feel comfortable with, that we don't like, that we wouldn't want our worst enemy living in. But we also have to be very realistic, right? And the idea of moving a loved one or a senior after they've got accustomed, it's a difficult move enough to put somebody in a nursing home. Okay, I've never done it. I can just only imagine how hard it would be, and I can speak to that because I've worked with hundreds of clients who have, and I've cried in my office with clients because of how difficult it was for them to put their husband or their wife, 50 years, who they've never spent a night apart from, until 2 nights ago when they moved into the nursing home. So I know it's difficult, but so I don't want them to go through that again, right? Where their loved one, it was difficult enough the first time. Now their loved one is situated, they're fine, or as fine as they can be. And then all of a sudden, 8 months later or 16 months later, the money's run out. And because that place doesn't accept Medicaid, now we've got to take them out of this environment that they've grown accustomed to and put them in a new place. And maybe a new place that maybe it's not as nice. Maybe it's just as nice. I don't know. So that's really one thing I really, want people to consider. Don't be short-sighted. Think of the long term. So there's some places that don't take Medicaid at all, and there's some nursing homes that do take Medicaid, and they take Medicaid and private pay. And most nursing homes that take Medicaid are, again, they're only going to have a certain amount of beds certified for Medicaid, and so that means that, inevitably, what happens in some of these situations is, let's say that they've got 200 beds and 120 are certified for Medicaid. Well, I might have a client that wants to move into that place, but all the Medicaid beds are full. And so the nursing home says to my clients, and they say, you know what, you can move in, but you're probably going to need to private pay for 2 or 3 months. It's likely that in 2 to 3 months or 4 months, a Medicaid bed will open and we'll let you transition into there. But if you want to be here, you're going to have to move in private pay first. And then once a bed becomes available, we'll move you in. And so they might have to private pay, $10,000 a month for 3 months or 4 months. And obviously, if they have the money, then that's not a problem because they have to spend their money anyway. They can't give it away. We'll talk about how that works from a Medicaid standpoint. But we just have to be aware that, again, this is where, being proactive. If we're looking at nursing homes for a loved one, especially those that take Medicaid, we need to be asking questions along the lines of, okay, you take Medicaid. Do you require any private pay first? What's your availability when it comes to Medicaid beds? And I tell my clients, you can be proactive. So maybe you're looking a year in advance, but understand that if I'm asking them today and they say, well, we need 3 months of private pay and then we can transition them to Medicaid, I tell them in a year, it might be 6 months. They might need 6 months of private pay, right? Because their availability can be much different in a year, right? We all know that. It's like a hotel, right? A hotel might have tons of vacancies today, and in 2 weeks they're booked, right? And you can't get a room. No different than a nursing home. Then we have, and we talked about this before, we have this idea of the Ccrc, right? Which I think we kind of went into enough detail, but again, just to kind of touch on that for a minute as well. The Ccrc, most of them are private pay. I would say a little more than half are probably private pay, where we're going to move in. independent living. And typically with a continuum care retirement community, a lot of times you're required to, when you're moving in, you either have to move in, most of them are going to say at the independent, when you're still independent, or maybe when you need some assisted living. But most of them will not accept somebody if they're moving in at the point where they already need skilled nursing care. Again, every place is different, but there's a lot of places that are going to say, you know what, we're okay with you moving in here, but you really need to be able to move in when you're more independent or assisted. If there's one person that's on that's not muted, if you can mute yourself, I can just hear some background noise, if you don't mind. So now some CCRCs and Covenant Village here in Northbrook is one of them, accept Medicaid. Okay, and so you're not going to get Medicaid on the independent side. You're not going to get Medicaid on the assisted living side. But when you're in the skilled nursing side, if you run out of money, you can apply for Medicaid, and they'll accept Medicaid. Because again, Medicaid does not cover assisted living. Medicaid does not cover independent living. Medicaid covers skilled nursing and then supportive living. And most supportive living facilities are going to be totally independent and totally separate from a CCRC. And again, so I want to just reiterate, some of these CCRCs do accept Medicaid once we get to the skilled nursing side, some don't. Some also have very different programs that they offer. So the only ones I can really speak to in this area, because I'm very familiar, would be Covenant. So Covenant Village or Covenant Living, I believe. I keep on saying Covenant Village. I think it's called Covenant Living now. They have like what I always call like a benevolence program, where I believe they have this program. And again, this is where people really have to be moving in more on the independent side. But at some point, if they run out of money, even if they're not in skilled nursing, they can apply basically for this, to this fund that's obviously being funded by donors. They can apply to this fund where they're going to turn over their income every month, but this fund will help support them to stay in the assisted living side of Covenant Living. And so again, Covenant Living is very different in that sense. Most places do not offer that. The only other place I can tell you in this area, or that I really know of in general, that offers something similar to that is Weinberg or Gidwitz in Deerfield, right at like Lake Cook and near 294. And they have something called the Jewish Elderly Housing Trust, and it's a very similar concept to what Covenant Village has. Families have to apply for it, but it's basically like a scholarship or like a grant, and it'll help people. But they'll do that from the start. So even the people that are moving in there more independent, I mean, it's pretty much more assisted. I shouldn't say independent, more assisted to some extent. They can apply for this grant. But I'm not as familiar with Covenant Living as far as their process. I know that for Weinberg or for Gidwitz, I know that they do require quite a bit of information from all adult children and their finances, because they want to see if they feel the adult children can help support the parents. Their take sort of is like, hey, we'll help out, but if you've got adult children that can help, we're gonna ask them to contribute a little bit, and then we'll contribute a little bit. So there was a question in the chat box: is memory care or assisted living private pay, or is it covered by Medicaid? Memory care, assisted living, anything assisted living, private pay. There will be no Medicaid involved with assisted living. So anytime we hear assisted living, 100% private pay. And honestly, anytime you hear memory care, whether it's memory care assisted living or memory care skilled nursing, 90 to 95% of the time, it's going to be private pay as well. There are very few places that even have, like a memory care aspect to them where Medicaid will be involved. Okay. And that's because, there's a lot, places put a lot more effort, and it's a lot more expensive to staff a place for true memory care. And because of that, it's just, you're looking at a place that they have to take private funds. They can't, they can't survive off of what the Medicaid reimbursement rate, unfortunately. So it's too bad. There's a lot of folks out there, obviously, that are battling memory issues, and just, based on their means, they're not able to go into a memory care facility, and they have to be, in supportive living or skilled nursing, where there's really no additional services for anything memory care related. But again, I wish it was different, unfortunately. And again, I'll say this again, I'll probably repeat it 4 more times. Everything comes down to money, right? And we all know that. And we all know that, while it would be ideal for us all to be able to take care of and handle certain things, or be able to do certain things or take advantage of certain things. We know that at the end of the day, it does come down to our means and our resources, and we just may not be able to. If we can't afford it, then we can't afford it. So I wish there was a better. I wish it was a better answer. I wish it was a better option. So this is probably it's actually a really good breaking point. I just got this message. So if you guys can give me like a minute, just a hair over a minute here, I will pop right back in and we will pick back up. So just give me like 60 seconds. All right. All right, quick and painless, guys. I feel like that was like 30 seconds. Thank you for bearing with me there. Okay, so we kind of touched on a bunch of these different living situations, and sort of what we're looking at from a private pay standpoint, what we're looking at from a Medicaid standpoint. From a cost standpoint for independent living, it can really vary. I know we went over the cost for the caregivers at home. So for independent living, I'm really not even the best person for this. I'm gonna say most independent living facilities, you're probably not gonna find anything for less than $2,000 a month. And it could be upwards of $3,500 to $4,000 a month, depending on the place, right? Obviously, we know that there are the Motel 8s of independent living, and there are the Ritz-Carltons of independent living, right? And so there is a pretty big range. I'm going to say most are probably closer to somewhere between $2,000 and $3,000 a month for independent, just to give you some kind of ballpark. When we look at assisted living or supportive living, these are probably going to be somewhere more in the range of $3,000 to $6,000 or $6,500 a month. And then if it's assisted living, assisted living memory care, I mean, we could be in the $5,500 to $8,000 a month range, or $8,500 a month. There are some places that, again, they do a lot of work, and they've got a really nice, really great staff that's trained very well to help individuals with that are battling memory loss. They've got great programming and great services, and so you pay for it. When we're looking at nursing homes, I think I gave you guys sort of an idea as to what those costs are, probably somewhere in the $8,500 to $12,000 a month range. And then the Ccrcs, that's where I'm not really that great. Okay, some of them are going to be month to month, right? So some of them they're going to charge you a monthly rate, and that's it. A lot more of them though will have some sort of buy-in, and I think some of I'm sure some of you might be familiar with this idea where you might you might have to put down sort of a deposit, if you want to call it. It could be $100,000 to $150,000 on the low end. There are going to be some that are going to be $500,000 to $1 million for a buy-in. The way that some of them will work, a lot of times there might be different levels, and so if you kind of buy in at the higher level, then a lot of times the way it works is that when you are no longer living there, and I think we can all figure out what happens when somebody's no longer, what has to happen for somebody to no longer be living somewhere, and it's not always when it's not always them moving out. A lot of times there'll be some sort of sort of refund, if you will, to the family, right? And so it might be an $800,000 buy-in, but there's going to be a 90% refund given to my family when I pass away, or when I do in fact move out. And then maybe if I bought in at 600,000, they get 70% back. And so there's different ways that some of these places might offer it. Some of them don't have any refund, right? Some of them, or there might be like a smaller amount to buy in. Maybe it's 75,000, maybe it's 100,000, maybe it's 150,000. Some of those may not have a refund of any sort. These things are really good to understand because some of them have, stipulations in there to say, listen, we're going to give you 90% back, but we're only going to give it back to you once we re-rent your specific room. And I've had clients where, and there's one particular place, and I'm not going to mention it, but I've had clients, and my partner and I over the years, at a particular place where they have that built into the contract. And we had clients that, it was a year, 18 months later, and they had not gotten the family had not gotten the refund yet. And I want to say in at least one of the situations, this was a case where, they had to move out because this was not a Ccrc. It was a buy-in at just an assisted living facility, or independent living and assisted. And they ultimately needed to move into a nursing home and apply for Medicaid because they didn't have any money left. And really the only asset they had was this deposit at the facility. And, it was a real issue with the Medicaid application because Medicaid was saying, well, you've got this money. And we were saying, well, we don't have access to it because they're not giving it back yet. So, look closely at the contracts you're signing, right? I mean, that should go without saying, but, these contracts, when you've got a loved one moving into any kind of long-term care situation, I'm not saying that you have to have an attorney review it, but, this is a big move and you're gonna be spending a lot of money. Paying an attorney a couple $100s to review a contract might not be the worst thing in the world, might not be the worst investment, just to make sure that the T's are crossed, I's are dotted, and some of the things might be, we might suggest that some things get stricken out of the contract. So again, so take a look at what we're signing, obviously. And then the other thing I want to mention is, when in a lot of these places where we are putting down a deposit, just so everybody's aware, there's still a monthly cost. You're still paying a monthly cost. Okay, so you're might be putting down a $900,000 deposit. You might still be paying $5,000 a month, right? So the V in the Glen is a nice place. It's very, very high end, very well maintained. I've never really heard anything negative about it, but it's expensive, right? I mean, you're looking at buy-ins that I don't know if you can buy in there for less than 500,000, and you're still looking at a monthly rent of $3,000 to $6,000 or $10,000 a month, depending on where you're living there. All right, last thing I want to talk about is Medicaid. Just because we've talked about the idea of Medicaid being an option, so I really just want to spend a couple minutes on how Medicaid works, very high level. So when we apply for Medicaid in a nursing home or assisted living facility, the way it works is that if I'm a single individual applying for Medicaid, I can have $2,000 in my name. Okay, doesn't mean I can own a house and have $2,000. I can have $2,000 total in my name. So I can have $2,000 in my name. If I'm in a supportive living facility, I get to keep $90 a month of my income, and the rest of my monthly income from Social Security or pension or a combination thereof goes to the supportive living facility. If I'm in a skilled nursing facility, I get to keep $30 a month of my income, and then the rest of my income goes to the nursing home. And then the last thing is that there's a 5-year look back. And so when I go to apply for Medicaid, Medicaid's going to look back 5 years. What did Matt do with his money? Did he, like I said before, we were talking about the caregivers, did I give any money away? Right? Did I give money to my daughter who lost her job? Did I give money to my son who was going through a divorce and needed help? This might sound crazy. Was I paying for guitar lessons for my granddaughter? Was I paying for horseback riding lessons for my grandson? Those would be looked at as gifts, unfortunately. And so the way it works, if we have gifted, we've given away any money over the last 5 years, and this could also be in the form of me selling my car that's worth $10,000 to my son for $2,000, right? Which would be an $8,000 difference. Medicaid would consider that $8,000 to be a gift as well. If I've gifted money in the last 5 years before applying for Medicaid, Medicaid's going to give me a penalty, and they're going to say, "Hey, Matt, even though you're down to $2,000 in your name, we see that you gave away $30,000 over the last 5 years." And the way they see that is because I have to give them 5 years worth of my bank statements. Okay, I've got to turn all of that over to them, bank statements, tax returns, etc. And so they say, Matt, you gave away $30,000 over the last 5 years. It doesn't matter if it was 4 years and 6 months ago, or if it was yesterday, anytime in the last 5 years. So I gave away 30,000. I'm down to 2,000 today. And let's just say the nursing home that I'm moving into is cost $10,000 a month to make it easy. Medicaid says, Matt, great, you're approved. However, we are going to give you a 3-month penalty. Okay, you're going to have to figure out a way to pay out of pocket for the next 3 months. And the reason why it's a 3-month penalty in this situation is that I gave away $30,000 and there's a $10,000 a month cost. So in Medicaid's eyes, I gave away 3 months worth of care at this place. Had I not given that money away, I would have been able to pay for the next 3 months, and then I would be applying for Medicaid. So Medicaid says, Matt, because of what you did, you got to figure out a way to pay for the next 3 months. We don't care how you do it. We just know that we're not going to cover you for the next 3 months. And so unless I can get that money back from whoever I gave it to, and in most situations, when money is given away, good luck at getting it back, right? Because in most cases, people that come to us are not trying to, skirt the system, right? Sometimes they are, and there's times when we help people do that in a legal, strategic way. And that's something I'll cover on another talk. But in most cases, people aren't doing this to skirt the system. They're doing it because their son truly needed help. Their daughter truly needed help. They wanted to help their grandkids, whatever it was. And so in most of these cases, if the money can't be given back, we're basically having to make a plea to the nursing home to say, hey, listen, I know Medicaid's not going to pay for me until 3 months from now. If I turn over all my income to you every month, is there any way I'm able to stay here? That's really what the plea is. Knock on wood, I haven't had a client where that's happened in almost 11 years of doing this. I haven't had a client where that's happened to them yet. I don't know how it hasn't happened yet, to be honest with you, based on the vast majority, based on the amount of Medicaid applications we do every year. But that's a tough spot to be in, and it's really a rock and a hard place right there. And then as far as how Medicaid works with a married couple, I'm trying to do this in 2 minutes so that we can cut off by 10:15. With a married couple, so if I'm the one going to the nursing home, everything I just talked to you about still applies. I can have no more than $2,000 in my name. I get to keep, $30 or $90 a month, depending on where I'm moving, supportive living or skilled nursing. And I have the 5-year look back period. Well, my wife, who's living at home, can have $109,560. Okay, $109,560. She can have a house and a car. The house can be worth $150,000. The house can be worth $1 million. Okay, the car can be a 25-year-old Toyota Corolla. The car can also be a $150,000 Mercedes. Doesn't matter. Now, I am not suggesting that your spouse go buy a $150,000 Mercedes before you apply for Medicaid as a way to protect assets, right? That's a terrible investment because the second she drives that car off the lot, it's probably gone down $30,000 in value. But again, there's some strategies and there's things that we help people with. And again, we talk about that on another talk, not today. So my wife can have $109,560, a house and a car. She can have $2,739 a month of income, $2,739. If in most cases, the spouse is not working, right? Because in most of these cases where somebody's applying for Medicaid, typically our clients are a little bit older, they're retired, they're not working anymore. And a lot of times their income is limited to Social Security and maybe a pension. And so if my wife has income of less than $2,739 a month, let's say she gets $1,200 from Social Security, I can take my excess income that if I was a single individual, I would have had to give the nursing home, right? Above my $30 a month or $90 a month that I'm allotted. And I can take my excess income and I can divert it to my wife to get her up to $2,739. So if she's under $2,739, I can transfer my income to her to get her up to that number. I can't put her over it, but I can get her up to it. Now, if she's already over that number, let's say that she has really high Social Security, or she's got a really nice pension, right? Maybe she's a teacher or a police officer. She's got a $7,000, $8,000 a month pension. Well, then I can't divert any income to her. And actually, if she's that high over the $2,739, there's an algorithm that we go through, and she might actually have to contribute a very small portion of that income on a monthly basis towards my care, in addition to my excess income. And then the last thing, the 5-year look back applies to her as well. Okay, so it's not like she's able to gift assets, but I'm not. We're a married couple. Medicaid looks at us as one unit. And so if she gave away money over the last 5 years, it impacts me just the same as if the money was given from an account that was in my name only. All right, it's 10:13. That leaves like a minute and a half probably for questions, if anybody has any questions. But that's all I got today. Thanks for being good listeners, good muters.
Thanks, Matt. That was
You're
awesome.
welcome. Thanks.
Are there any questions from the group? I know we got one of them already answered. Okay. All right. Well, let me know if there is, and I can always get them to Matt. All right, that concludes our YMCA education presentation. On behalf of the YMCA and YES series, we thank you for supporting our organization and programs like this. A special thank you to Matt for speaking with us today. I'm always learning more and more about Medicaid, so thank you. Programs like this are free and open to everyone in the community. So if you enjoyed today's program and would like to support the North Suburban YMCA, please consider helping with a donation at www.nsymca.org. We hope to see you at our next speaker series event. It will be tomorrow at 11 a.m. It's Demystifying Life Insurance. September is Life Insurance Month. Tomorrow at 11 a.m. With Way. So thank you everyone, especially Matt for today, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.
Thanks very much, Matt.
Thanks,
Thank
Pam.
you.
You got it. Have a great day, guys. Thanks for listening.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.